Hey, what's up guys? My name is Brandon Middleton. I'm the founder and visionary of NOVAEO, and we have a very special and very unique role that we are currently recruiting, and I hope that you are a perfect fit for. Alright, so a little bit of context here about us is we have something around 8, 9, 10 health and wellness product brands that we own ourselves. Ranges in the realms of dietary supplements, cosmetics, over-the-counter drugs, tea, healthy sweeteners, and USDA organic superfoods. And we have our manufacturing facility in Tampa, Florida, where we manufacture ourselves probably about 60-70% of our product lines across all of the brands, and the remainder of the products we use contract manufacturers for elsewhere in the United States. But we have basically have a strategy where we're always trying to vertically integrate. So whatever is being manufactured outside of our warehouse, we plan for one day when the numbers make sense to get the correct machinery or to get the correct certifications and compliance requirements, that we would then bring that manufacturing in-house. And these product brands that we have are almost entirely sold through e-commerce and almost entirely sold through Amazon, though we are about to start making a pretty big effort to expand into other countries, e-commerce, other countries, and also get into some brick and mortar as well. And like I said, most of our e-commerce is sold through Amazon. We also are trying to expand our off Amazon presence as well. So this role that we're recruiting is a remote supply chain lead and remote warehouse mentor as one role. And this warehouse mentor role, that's the truly unique part about this. And so basically what we currently have at our Tampa facility, it's a very small team. It's only fluctuates between about 6 to 8 people, because we very much believe in trying to keep as small of a team as possible by leveraging systems and remote team members. Basically, our rule is if anything can be done remotely, then it ought to be done remotely. Honestly, just having a very good morale system for the team so that our team members at the warehouse, are incentivized to produce a lot more so than what I would imagine an individual would be producing at say a competitor warehouse. But as far as our leadership goes at that warehouse, we're in an interesting position where we recently promoted. Actually, let me back up a step. It's very common in the NOVAEO ecosystem, and I say ecosystem if this is your first piece of content that you're watching of ours. We have, like I said, numerous product brands. We have a marketing agency, an accounting agency, customer service agency, a recruiting agency. We have all these different agencies that support our product brands, and then we have our manufacturing facility. And so each of these separate businesses are all aligned to work together, but are also, they have clientele outside of our bubble, outside of our ecosystem on their own. And that's actually, that's a good segue into what we're trying to accomplish now with our manufacturing facility. Is currently we only manufacture for our own brands, but we want to set up the systems and the leadership so that we can actually brand this, we'll basically separate the entity, or separate the operation into its own entity, brand it, start marketing it so that we can get clientele that we manufacture and do 3PL services for, so order fulfillment and import, export, that kind of stuff. So anyway, we're in an interesting position because it's NOVAEO culture that people will often jump from one role to another based on their interest, their passion, new skills that they want to develop, etc. And our warehouse leadership, of which we had two people have both opted to move into basically starting new business entities. One of them moved into, actually they both more or less moved into sales. One is helping us expand into Latin America, and one is building a sales team for our product brands here in the US. And so what we've done is we promoted two of our warehouse team members to basically being co-managers. And they're both very young guys. They both started at the warehouse as just like basic level associates, and showed a lot of promise. Their only experience in working warehouses with us, and great morale, great personalities, but unfortunately one of them had basically an unplanned family occurrence and had to leave Tampa. And so he's still working with us, but in a different role, because now he's remote. And so now we're just left with one of these co-managers that is quite still inexperienced. So what we're looking to do is to recruit another young, hungry, motivated, but probably inexperienced co-manager. And that'll be someone that is going to be working inside the warehouse, not a remote position. And so this role that we're recruiting now, we need an overarching supply chain lead, and that role can be done remotely. So that's going to be the primary focus of this role. But we really want to have a big focus. We want this role to have a big focus on mentoring these young, inexperienced managers at the warehouse, which our predominant function there is manufacturing, but of course we do inventorying and a small degree of order fulfillment, because with Amazon, basically we just have to ship pallets to Amazon, then Amazon figures out the order fulfillment to consumers. So only a small scale of direct-to-consumer order fulfillment, but nonetheless it's an operation. And so we're looking for someone that can take on the entirety of that remote supply chain lead, but to also provide that mentorship. And basically, initially, say like the first 6 months, maybe even, probably like first 6 months, having a pretty like watchful eye over the warehouse, and then slowly kind of like lengthening the leash as our young warehouse managers gain more experience and more confidence. So that's the warehouse mentor part. And so over time, there's going to be less and less of that role, that part of the role being necessary, which is going to allow for more and more headspace, more and more attention and focus to scale and optimize our overarching supply chain. So what that would look like really in this entirety is where we're at with our supply chain. I myself, I'm pretty experienced and pretty talented with supply chain in general. And I have conceptualized probably about 95% of our supply chain systems in their entirety, from inventory management to procurement, order fulfillment, and then even the operations at the warehouse, to a lesser degree, not 95%, but the manufacturing systems, receiving and dispatch systems, all this kind of stuff. And we were basically, before I say conceptualize, because basically I've thought through it, and I've produced actually a lot of video like this communicating through these systems. But prior to that, we were more or less operating on the fly. So it's like whatever stuff needed to get done, we would just come together and talk through it and then get it done. But that requires a lot of communication, which then turns into communication overhead, which is even more difficult when you're working with remote teams that are in different time zones. And just in general, it's just a big inefficiency. So we're in this process of trying to move into these conceptualized systems that I've created, but while still having to perform our day-to-day operations, so we can't really just jump straight into them. So it's kind of a slow transition. We're probably about like 50 to 60% on our way into that transition. And so this role would initially have to understand the systems that I've conceptualized, and then help to really communicate those to the rest of the supply chain team, which we have one person full-time for sourcing and procurement, one person full-time for inventory management. We have the 6 to 8 people at the warehouse, including the 1 and what will be 2 co-managers. And when I say co-managers, really it's one is a quality lead and one is a production lead. And they're on equal footing, but segregation of responsibilities. And so we have a pretty small supply chain team overall. We have another person who is basically a supply chain assistant that helps with all kinds of different tasking. And then we also have, for our whole entire ecosystem, someone that is just like a total wizard with spreadsheets. And because our supply chain runs mostly through Google Sheets, that person tends to have most of their time being in supply chain, but they're not technically a dedicated supply chain person. They're technically just a dedicated spreadsheet wizard. And so that's the supply chain team that we have now. So we're looking for that lead to basically backfill our chief operating officer, who's currently filling that role, but he has very limited headspace and is not really able to dedicate the time and attention that the role really deserves. And he's also not able to help build out these systems that I've conceptualized and communicated via video, and there's some written stuff too. So initially what this role will look like will be understanding the systems that I've conceptualized, and part of this, this application process, once we create a short list of applicants, so probably just like 2 or 3 people, I will be releasing those videos to you and making sure that you understand them yourself. And we'll have some back and forth, live or recorded, whatever. And basically just make sure that you can understand them, because the start of your role will be getting familiar with everything that we're doing, and then basically creating the SOPs for these systems as they're conceptualized. And not just SOPs, but all sorts of like tutorials, like visual models, like flowcharts and stuff like that. And then teaching the team members this optimized and more efficient and more effective system. And that's going to include needing to create systems for data collection and all. So it's a big system, but it's really not that difficult. And if you're the right person for this role, it'll be very easy for you to understand. And so once we get these systems rolling, and once we build some momentum, and once we work out the kinks, and once you start getting data, then I'm going to totally hand over the entire leadership process, all of it, the strategy, everything to you. So I'm not going to sit there and say we have to use the systems that I've conceptualized, but we will start that way, and that'll be our baseline. And then at that point, your responsibility will be to always optimize and scale, because we are a very, very fast growing company. And once we start taking on clients, then we're going to have to really grow fast. So we really need to get these systems bulletproof. And as you already know, I'm sure, because everything in supply chain is always changing, that means the systems have to be a little bit malleable and able to adapt to. So again, let me repeat myself in saying that when you first start with us, it'll be my systems that we run. It'll be your responsibility to get the team to be running my systems. But once we work out the kinks, once we build that momentum, and once we are collecting all the data, which we're collecting a lot of it now, but once we're really collecting all the data and analyzing it, which will again be your responsibility, which includes warehouse data and outside the upstream, I'll use upstream and downstream. There's not much data for downstream. More so on the upstream side, and then at the warehouse side, really good data collection. You would be interpreting it, analyzing it, reporting on it to keep me informed and our COO informed. But ultimately from there, you can be restructuring and re-strategizing the systems as you see fit. So initially, a little bit less autonomy, but as time goes on, 6 months maybe, full autonomy is the goal. Okay? So when I talk about the systems, we're not making a hard rule for this, but I do think it's going to be very, 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 very beneficial if you're coming into the team already having worked with remote teams before and using the sort of apps and platforms that remote teams use. So for example, for accountability and project management, we use ClickUp, which is similar to Asana or Basecamp. We use Slack for communications. We use Voxer for recorded audios. We use Loom for screencast videos. And we use Google Suite for email and our file storage. And I don't know, I mean, there's a couple other things that's not coming to my mind right now. So you're gonna have to be a little tech savvy, and ideally you will already have experience with these kinds of things. Because if your only experience is leadership and management in an office, in supply chain, there's gonna be a bit of a learning curve. And you're gonna have to forget some of what you know and learn new things. And it's very possible that you can pull that off. So we're not making a hard line saying you have to have this experience, but it is gonna be quite beneficial. Additionally, e-commerce experience is pretty much, again, I don't wanna say it's a must because the right person can learn anything, but it is gonna be very beneficial. And then Amazon e-commerce experience, even more beneficial, serving the United States market, which is the majority of our market as of now. Even though we are gonna expand, the US is pretty much gonna always be our strongest market. So having experience serving that market will be fantastic. We source most of our materials, our raw materials, from China. Not all of it. We do have a lot of vendors, American vendors and elsewhere in the world. But a lot of it's from China, so that's important with working with the Chinese and import-export stuff. Well, I guess really just import with that. So all that would be great experience if you have it, and make sure to make note of that in your application with us. So the warehouse mentorship part of it, where we're at now is we're pretty good at getting the job done, but we're not necessarily doing it the most efficient way, and we're really not prepared to scale. And so a lot of that is, we need that data-driven person that can just look at data and be like, okay, there's a number, how do I make that number, how do I improve that number? And I actually forgot a role that we have, another supply chain role. We call it our operations optimization specialist. He's remote, he's in the Philippines, he's an industrial engineer. And part of his role, although he's doing other things right now and he's not fully dedicated to this, is we have cameras set up all over the warehouse, and to watch the cameras to see how we're doing things, what do our manufacturing lines look like, etc. And then to basically conceptualize new ways of running the lines, or even better, is looking at the data, seeing what operation, are we spending the most labor on, cost, and then thinking, okay, what machines are out there that could make this more efficient, and then do sourcing of the machines. But like I said, he's focused on some system building right now, and he has been for a while, and he probably will be for a while. And honestly, there's just so much value in that realm that we would really like for you to come to the table with those same skills, to be able to ask for the right data from the warehouse, to know how that data should be portrayed, in spreadsheet form, to be able to interpret that data and then make decisions on how to optimize, to become more efficient, to become more effective, to reduce errors, stuff like that. So that's a high degree of where this warehouse mentorship role is going to be. But once those systems get underway, and once we release our ops time and headspace, you'll be able to back off of that a decent amount. But initially, it would definitely be great for you to have that skill set and that experience, that ability to perform in that way. So, like I said, obviously the job is fully remote. We won't force this on anyone, but no matter where you are in the world, because we recruit worldwide, no matter where you are in the world, it would be pretty cool if you could come visit the warehouse, maybe once, twice a year, whatever. But again, that's not mandatory. We've succeeded without that, needing that. So it's not mandatory, but it'd be cool, just people bond a little bit, see the operation. But without having without being in the facility, the idea is that you'll be able to use the cameras to have a view of what's going on inside the warehouse. And the warehouse is not very large. It's only it's a little bit under 6,000 square feet. Although we are starting to bust at the seams, so I'd say probably in the next like year or two, we'll probably have to figure out another solution. We're going to need more space. But it's pretty small. And then ideally you have some kind of overlap with the warehouse schedule. So if you're all the way out like Southeast Asia, then we don't want to require that someone works nights. Now, if you like to work nights your time, then that is fantastic, because having full overlap with the warehouse is fantastic. And so you can look at the time zone of Tampa, Florida. It's the same time zone as New York City, so you can figure out what that would be. And I believe the warehouse starts at 7 a.m., so I think it's a 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift. Right now we only run one shift, but as we scale, we probably do like some split shifts, maybe even some weekend shifts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, just having some kind of overlap, maybe like in the beginning, the morning, and maybe like the 4 p.m. range, where you can get together with our two warehouse leads. Like all that would be preferred, but no requirement to be fully on the schedule of the warehouse. So if you're all the way on the other hemisphere, then we don't want anyone losing sleep. That's for sure. Health, actually wellness, is one of our company core values, and sleep is like pretty much the most important part of wellness. So we hold that very, very dear. All right. Let me take a quick pause right here and make sure I communicated all the context that you could possibly need in order to understand this role. And let me see if I can think of anything else that I should include in here. All right, one moment. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna walk through a little bit. I'll try to be brief because I don't want to make this video so painfully long. But like I said, our inventory management system, we just run through Google Sheets. We actually found a white space in the market where there is no cookie cutter like software out there that serves exactly what our needs are. And we have found, basically in my personal network, my professional network, I know lots and lots of other entrepreneurs that do similar stuff. And I have found that there's a massive need for a software that would fulfill our needs, because if we can fulfill our needs, it'll fulfill the needs of a lot of other people. So we actually envision one day of building a software and then marketing that as another income stream. But for now, we're in Google Sheets, and we're still kind of working out some kinks with our IMS, our inventory management system. Sourcing and procurement. So anyway, if you have, we want your role, we want you to have at least a little bit of knowledge in all things supply chain, to where you can provide guidance to any individuals that need it, because we have a lot of these roles are just one person, and it's just always nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of. So for you to be able to let our sourcing procurement person bounce ideas off of you, our inventory manager to bounce ideas off of you, our ops op to bounce ideas off of you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as sourcing and procurement goes, most of our sourcing is raw materials, but we do get some finished goods from other contract manufacturers because we don't have those compliance requirements, or actually a lot of it's just not having the machinery. So being able to source, it would be nice if we sourced a few more contract manufacturers to keep our current ones a little honest. Our relationships with them, we think we could probably find some better ones. Not all of them, some of them are great, but some are, Anyway, so, help in that realm, sourcing, procurement, inventory management, and then, like I said, we're expanding into Latin America as well, and we're going to, we have to run cost analysis to really say this is exactly what we want to do, but it's very likely that we're at least going to set up a warehouse in Mexico to serve the Latin American market, and then that can just be for holding inventory. And then from there, it's probably going to be quite likely that we may as well manufacture there as well. No intention, in fact, it would be highly unlikely, almost not even possible, that we would only manufacture there. It would just be an expansion, like a satellite facility. But obviously you would be involved in that as the supply chain lead. But you don't have to be the direct person. We already have a person that's totally dedicated to the Latin American expansion project. Let's see. All right, let me give another quick pause, and I'm gonna keep this under 30 minutes. So I got 5 more minutes. You know what, it's worth me mentioning this just in case. So I already hinted that the game plan is to take our supply chain, which, you know, the big headspace thing there is the manufacturing facility, but to take our supply chain and brand it. The name is Le Luna Labs. And right now there's really nothing online about Le Luna Labs, but we're gonna brand it, we're gonna market it, and we're gonna be able to take on clients. So another role that we're recruiting, totally different than this role, is a CEO for that business. And that would be an equity holding business partner, predominantly paid through profit share. So that role is going to need to understand branding, marketing, sales, and account management. You know, it's a more expansive realm. But if you really think, and we're going to hold, like, we're not in a rush for that role. We're holding out for someone amazing, like super amazing. So if you think you might be that person, then go ahead and let us know. And like, I'm not putting out a job ad for that quite yet. So if you really think you might be that person, go ahead and apply for this role, but let us know that you're interested in that CEO role. It's also possible we don't even fill that role for like 1 or 2 years, because honestly, like, I can do it. It's just a matter of headspace. So if I'm going to work on that project, then there's other projects that I won't be able to work on. But this is a really, really high value project, and it's also gonna be a lot of fun. So I'm cool doing it for as long as we need. So it's also possible that, you know, someone comes into this supply chain lead plus warehouse mentor role and kind of builds some skills that maybe they wouldn't have for the CEO role, and eventually become the CEO. And it would be ideal in that scenario to be able to spend more time at the warehouse. But again, it doesn't have to be like living in Florida. It could be traveling maybe like once every 3 months, something like that. Like, that would be fantastic. But all right, don't let me talk too much more about that role. Another thing I forgot to mention is the compliance. So having experience in a manufacturing operation that has to adhere to compliance, like regulatory standards, and even more specifically would be like pharmaceuticals, that's actually even more robust than our compliance standards. But specifically for us, it's foods, it's dietary supplements, it's cosmetics, and it's over-the-counter drugs. Over-the-counter drugs sounds pretty sweet, but it's basically just like our acne products in the United States. Acne remedies are considered an over-the-counter drug, which is, it's like a there's dietary supplements, there's OTC drugs, and then there's pharmaceuticals. So pharmaceuticals has like high regulation. OTC is probably like halfway in between the pharma and like the dietary supplements / foods. Foods and dietary supplements are regulated at the same level. And so we are FDA compliant for foods and dietary supplements. No compliance is actually required for cosmetics, although that is changing, and we're fine with that. The over-the-counter drugs, we're not, so that's actually what we use the contract manufacturers for. And we are compliant, we are certified for USDA organic, so we definitely take advantage of that. But again, the goal is to vertically integrate. So we do want to eventually become compliant for over-the-counter drugs. So if you can help out with that, that would be fantastic. If you can make sure that, you know, a little bit of supervision, that mentorship over our quality lead, that would be fantastic. So that's all the compliance requirements. We roll that into the quality lead. And I'm just going to emphasize one more time the machines. We have so much value on the table if we found better machines. We've been buying we have a couple expensive machines, well, expensive like $20,000 to $40,000. Most of our machines are like under $5,000, and a lot of them are from China, and they break all the time, and they're just like kind of frustrating. But if you can help out with finding machines and knowing which ones to get and all that stuff, That would be a really fast way for you to, oh, I'm about to hit 30 minutes. All right, that would be a really fast way for you to just immediately create a lot of value for us, because I don't have the headspace for it. Derek, the COO, doesn't have the headspace for it. The supply chain team, they have a lot of other stuff that they're working on, so that'd be really awesome. All right, let me wrap this up. I appreciate you watching a full 30 minutes of this. If you actually watched a full 30 minutes of this, thank you very much. The rest of your application process, if you have any questions that you would like to ask for additional context or anything like that, that'll help you create a better application, then please just ask. And I'm not sure at what phase of the application process. Sometimes it's in the first phase, sometimes it's in the second. I am going to ask for you to do a selfie video back so that we can gauge personality and all that stuff. And plus, this is how we talk to each other quite a lot, whether it's live or recorded. It's, again, we're a fully remote team. We have about 70 people in the whole ecosystem, most of which are scattered throughout the whole world. So we call it asynchronous communication when we're doing recorded stuff, versus synchronous would be like live meetings and stuff like that. Oh, meetings, yeah, there would probably be an expectation that you would have a meeting with the supply chain team every day, probably like 1 or 2 45-minute to an hour meetings per week, and then like 15-minute, 20-minute meetings per day. That would be a pretty fair expectation. But that kind of stuff, that'll be up to you as the lead. So you get to figure out your own work dynamic. All right, anyway, thanks again for watching. I'm really excited to see your application. Again, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask. Oh, shit. Income. Sorry, I went over the 30-minute mark. Income. All right, this is huge. This is basically true in all things NOVAEO, all the roles inside the ecosystem, but there is infinite, and I mean literally infinite room for advancement and progression, whether it's within the realm that you started and just grow and grow and grow and grow, or like I told you before, some of our team members in supply chain have jumped to other roles because they're just really curious and really interested in it. So that's really common too. But when we hire, we do look at the economy that you're coming from, and the initial job offer has something to do with the economy that you come from. But once you're in the team, we look at the value that you produce, and we give you back a chunk of that value that you produce. So basically the way it works is if we have a project and there's a few people involved in that project, we call them pods. So every team or department or whatever is a pod. So we analyze the value created, and if there's no direct like dollar amount value, we create one. So like customer service, we've created a way to figure out how many dollars are created in customer service, even though customer service doesn't sell anything or whatever. So anyway, we measure value produced, and a chunk of that value goes to the individuals that directly created it inside the pod. A chunk of that value gets distributed to the whole team, which also means a chunk of other people's pods will also get distributed back to you. Smaller chunk. The bigger chunk comes from the value that you are directly tied to. And then the bottom line of the entire ecosystem, we also have a distribution mechanism for that. So where you can really significantly scale your income with us is by continuing to scale your outputs. And there is no plateau. Regardless of whether you're in the Philippines or India or Mexico or whatever, there is no plateau. We measure the value that you produce, and we give you a chunk back. And other chunks get distributed to the whole team, invested back into the projects that you're working on to scale the project, and invested back into the entirety of the ecosystem so we can scale the ecosystem. So I really want to make sure that this is well understood. The sky is the limit, meaning there is no limit. But one of our other core values is meritocracy. You reap what you sow. So if you're not producing a substantial amount, you won't earn a substantial amount. But if you are producing a substantial amount, and if you continue to grow what you're able to produce, then your income will always continue to grow. And there's no plateau. All right, at least I kept it under 35 minutes. Thanks one last time for watching. Look forward to your application. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.